Luigi Mangione is due in court about 4 hours from now, and sources tell CBS News he could enter a guilty plea in his federal murder case. Mangione is accused of killing UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson back in 2024. He was arrested in Pennsylvania after a 5-day manhunt across multiple states. We told you yesterday about the discussions happening between the defense and prosecution in this case. Sources tell CBS News his guilty plea could come today, less than a month before his state trial was set to begin. Joe Tamburino is an attorney and legal analyst. He joins us now with more on this. Joe, good morning. First off, we want to be clear, nothing is final here until it's announced in court. But does it make sense for Mangione to plead guilty in his federal case when he's also facing state charges?
Good morning, Michael. Thank you for having me on. Yes, I think it would make sense for him because in any type of plea negotiation and any type of plea deal, both sides get something. So I'm sure what Mr. Mangione is trying to do is see if he can get a sentence of anything rather than life in prison because he's only 28 years old. And I'm sure he's going to try to work out a deal where he could still walk out of prison alive rather than spending his whole life there.
And Joe, in your opinion, would the double jeopardy argument apply in his state case if he enters a guilty plea today in the federal case?
No, I don't think it would, and that's for this reason. New York's double jeopardy law has a number of exceptions. And one of those exceptions is when you have two different types of charges from different sovereigns or different governments, the state and the federal. And those charges involve different elements, meaning components to a crime, and the charges are preventing different types of harm. So in this case, we have New York law, which has intentional murder, and that has different elements than in the federal charge of stalking. And New York's law is trying to prevent intentional murders, whereas the federal government is trying to prevent stalking or crossing state lines to stalk a victim and the victim dies. So we have two different types of charges with different elements, and those charges are designed to prevent different types of harm. So I don't think double jeopardy would prevent New York State from continuing with their prosecution.
So if the state case does proceed, could a guilty plea in the federal case affect or delay the state trial?
Yes, it could, and that's only normal because if you're resolving your federal case, that's the first one that's being resolved, and then you go into state court, many times it wouldn't make sense to have a trial in that state court. You would try to work out another deal. Why would you do that? Because you want to see if you could have the two cases in tandem, meaning that they're going to make sense with each other. Or you want to have the two cases run concurrently, which means you're not going to get additional time for one or time on top of whatever you're already serving in the first case. So, yes, I think it would make sense to try to resolve the state case after this federal plea.
All right, Joe Tamburino, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.